Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming outside me today. Today, we head to Northern Indiana to talk with Derek Craig from Magnus Broadheads and New Day Outdoors on YouTube, a great friend of mine. Very excited that he is on the show today. Not as I consider to be your average guy, but I'm still happy he's here. But if you at home, the average guy, if you will, just like me, you want to be on the podcast, please send me an email, average.archery@gmail.com. Find me on Instagram, find me on Facebook, leave a comment on YouTube. We'd love to have you on. But today's episode is not about you. It is about Derek. And Derek, I can't thank you enough, buddy, for coming on the show today.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. And you are completely wrong. I am 100% average.
I'll never forget the first time I met Derek at ATA, and I had watched all of Derek's videos. I'll never forget it. I walk up to him, and I'd always thought Derek was shorter because I'm 6'4". I walked up, and I remember the first thing was like, oh, my gosh, he's a lot taller than I thought he was on camera. And I remember telling you that and being like, yeah, I watch all of your stuff and all this sort of thing. And it was just really cool. And I'm glad that our friendship's where it's at, and it's been flourishing. We've seen each other at ATA. It's kind of like our deer camp getting back together. And I'm happy to have you on today, bud. It's awesome. So
I'm just glad there's one person that's watched everything that I've ever made.
Every single video. I go back and watch the prototype Magnus Black Hornet hunt that you blur out the broadhead. I watch that every single year, like the night before archery season. It's like one of my pump up videos. It is. It truly is. I'm not lying. I watch it every single year at least once before the fall season rolls around.
The best part about that video was me shooting the woodchuck, though.
Oh, it's the greatest. It was a big old whistle pig. Big old whistle pig. But anyhow, for those who don't know Derek as well as I do back home, Derek, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit? You work in the industry, but you have other backgrounds, of course, outside of it as well, and where you are there.
So again, my name's Derek Craig. I actually born and raised and still live in Northeast Indiana, just outside of a small town called Angola. We are literally in the northeast corner from my house. I can be in Ohio in under 10 minutes. I can be in Michigan in under 10 minutes. So anyways, I'm 51 years old. I'm an old man anymore, I feel like, but I'm actually a mechanical engineer. I've spent my entire career working in construction engineering, design engineering, project engineering, owned my own business for about 10 years, sold that, have some patents and all kinds of different things. And I currently am my role is a forensic engineer. So I work from home, which I was working from home before working from home became cool in the last few months. But anyway, so I feel like everybody now they've all tapped into they know how awesome working from home is, and it was a great kept secret before. But I do get to dabble in the hunting industry. I've been affiliated with Magnus Broadheads in all kinds of capacities since 2009, so over a decade now. So that's probably my biggest role in the industry. But I've got other companies that I work with and friendships that I've made, and I've got this little thing called New Day Outdoors that's been my own thing for, again, over a decade, for 11 or 12 years now. But yeah, Magnus has been my ticket to getting into this industry and everything I've done. And Mike Somm, who owns Magnus Broadheads, has become one of my dearest, closest friends. And the journey that he and I have gone through together has been pretty awesome. So, yeah.
And it's really cool. The more and more that I've only now, quote, been around the industry truly for like the past 2 years, but the more and more that I get to be in it, the more and more I realize that it's just a lot of people in your shoes, in my shoes. We have like real jobs, like in real life. And then our industry connection is just that. It's our industry connection.
Yeah, because you can't make a living in the industry.
No.
you can't.
I'll never forget the first time I met Mike in 2018 at the ATA show. He's like, no one gets in the broadhead industry to be a millionaire.
No.
And it's so true.
but if you get on social media, everybody thinks that people are in the broadhead industry or any aspect of the hunting industry. We're all millionaires and stuff. But yeah, it's been fun because I've always said that my mortgage money and my grocery money is made outside of the industry. So when I work into the industry, for me, it's pure enjoyment. So many people in the industry, and we see the guys on TV, they get accused of hopping from brand A to brand B and following the money. And in their defense, I know that's frustrating to watch, but in their defense, that's because their mortgage payment hangs on that. When your mortgage payment or putting food on the table for your family hangs on, do I shoot brand A because I like it better or brand B because they're going to pay me 20% more than brand A was? That's why that happens. And, so for guys like me and yourself and many of our mutual friends that we have in this industry who make their primary living elsewhere, for us being in this industry is a lot of fun. And I think there's a lot of, you get more genuine opinions, whether it's doing reviews on products or genuine relationships, because you're now out to connect with brand X or Joe Smith because of a dollar sign. And so that for me has always been kind of one of the wonderful parts about, at least for my role in the industry. And I think that the companies that I align myself with, whether it's a formal alignment or just gentlemen's agreement alignments, I think they appreciate that too, so.
Right. And I always have told people I put way more money into me doing this with the industry than I've ever gotten out of it. Way more
Oh,
money has gone. It's not even it, it is not even close. But like you said, because I don't know of a good way to think of it. I'm kind of a glorified customer, really, or a yeah, I mean I think it's the best way to say it, glorified customer. I get to kind of go to the ATA show and all that sort of stuff, but I'm paying my way, right? I
yeah,
I, I pay for
yeah.
my hotel room. No one's paying for that. I pay for the gas, the car to get down there, pay for my meals. No one's paying for any of that sort of stuff. And so for me, in putting that in, because I'm not getting money from somebody, I feel no um, push or drive to say, well, I have to say nice things about this. And
Right.
so I'm able to then work around and work with, not work for, because they're not paying me anything, but and work around these companies that I truly believe in, the people that I strongly connect with. And I think that a lot of people kind of misconstrue folks on YouTube, you, me, guys like the Hunting Public, Garrett Prawl, or all that sort of stuff, these faces that we're in it because we're getting money, and that is just not true whatsoever. We're in it because we truly enjoy it. This is a glorified hobby for us, and we are putting a lot more into it than we're ever going to get out of it. And I'm totally fine with that. I really am.
Oh yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
really am.
I mean, everybody's case is different, and I know for me, yeah, there's a lot of perks in it. When I go to ATA, I don't pay for anything. There's a lot of products that are just sent to me. Um, those are definite perks, but I will tell you that if I was, let me put it this way. I would be financially way further ahead for me just to jump on Cabela's website and buy the things that I need, because everything that I invest and do, whether it's the video side or just everything else in the industry, trust me, I spend so much more money that when a couple of packs of broadhead show up on my doorstep, or a dozen arrows, or whatever it is, like that doesn't even cover the costs that it took to get there. So nobody's writing me checks.
Right.
If they want to, that's great. Hey, that'd be awesome. Write me some checks.
Right.
I mean, if I get a couple free turkey decoys, then so be it. But you don't understand how much money of my money's going in on the front end of things. And I do a lot of R&D stuff for Magnus and other companies as well. And rather than taking a check, Sometimes it's a, hey, here's a turkey decoy, or here's a whatever, and that's fine by me, because I don't do it for the money, and I don't do it for the free product. It's doing it for the relationships. It's doing it to help a brand and a company, which ultimately is the owner, the face behind that company, who I've become great friends with, and I believe in it, and I want to see that person succeed just as much as I want to see me succeed in whatever I do in life. So, I want to see Mike Somm succeed more than any person that I've ever known. I want to see Dave Smith and Brad Cochran succeed more than any people I know. I mean, there's some of those three gentlemen I just rattled off right there. Greg Hogan, I'd throw him in the mix with DSD as well, are some of the most genuine, nicest people that I've ever met. And I've got many others that I know in this industry. So when I throw my name in the hat with them on a project, and they send me a decoy, or in Mike's case, whoever knows how many packets of broadheads or whatever, I'm not doing it for that. I'm doing it for them, because I want to see them succeed, because I truly admire what they're doing. I love them as people. I respect the hell out of them and consider them some of my dearest friends in this world, so I want to see that, just as I want to see, you and what you're doing in your YouTube channel and all that succeed. I'd bend over backwards, and, if you want help on a video project, just so I could see that Nate succeeded in whatever that project was, or it got you to another level or whatever. And that's just, I think when you start working within the industry that way, the rewards that you get from it are so much more than somebody writing you a check for, a few $100 or a few $1,000 or whatever. I'll take that stuff any day over the money. That's why I
Right.
do what I do.
And I don't think a lot of people, I think it's becoming more and more prevalent now, with more and more faces in the YouTube scene in particular, how small and how tight knit the outdoor industry, and in particular the subset of the archery industry, really is in the grand scheme of all the major, like the firearms industry or the automobile industry. You don't really realize until you kind of start getting more and more peeks at the inside. Everybody knows everybody in some
Oh
way,
yeah.
and they might know,
Yeah.
they might remember them back from 20 years ago when they first, I was doing this and they were doing that, and there's a lot of that. And I'm glad that I get to see that, because I always, before I kind of started getting more involved, that I always thought, oh, it's just these huge mega corporation companies. No, it's not. It's a guy
No.
making broadheads out of his garage. It's a guy
Yeah.
making strings out of his pole barn in his backyard. I mean, it's that sort of stuff. And the owners and the CEOs are doing a lot of the work themselves. They're not sitting in some high rise tower in New York City or something and overlooking the books. They're in the machine shop. They're in where the targets are made. They're in where the arrows are manufactured or whatever. And there's a lot of that. And I think that's a cool thing that it's kind of getting, I don't want to say exposed, because that sounds like it was some deep dark secret, but I think that's a cool thing, because I think more and more people are understanding this connection and these connections between people, because I want to see you succeed, right? I don't care if a channel has 500 subscribers or 500,000. I want to see everybody, because if we are all helping each other and pushing each other in the right direction, we're just dragging each other down. And it's so important for that. And so, since we kind of have that, we've cracked open the industry thing here, I want to talk quickly about this, because I get this question asked a lot. Because I shoot Magnus broadheads, I've shot Magnus broadheads all when I was a kid. I shoot them now, obviously now as a grown up, now that I left, the 2 years that I shot mechanicals behind. I get asked a lot, hey, did Magnus come out with a new broadhead like all the other companies did, or the vast majority of companies? And I kind of want to unpack this a little bit, because I don't think people understand, when it comes to making a bow with new cams or limbs, or new riser designs or new broadheads in the machining, how much money goes into the R&D work behind the scenes before that product hits the floor and hits the packaging and hits the shelves. So, for example, Magnus released the Black Hornet in 2015. They haven't done anything else, but there are reasons as to why that has happened. And a big one is the return on investment. I kind of want to talk about that real quick for the folks at home who don't really understand that.
Right. So, business 101 is a simple term called ROI, return on investment. I mean, so anytime in business when you are going to buy a piece of equipment, if you're going to develop a new product, develop a new process, whatever, the thing you have to look at is what is your ROI? What's the return on investment? And how quickly am I going to recoup that money? Let's say, for example, that I decided for whatever reason I wanted to start a machine shop out in my pole barn here at my house. Well, let's say I'm going to buy a screw machine or something. I mean, and I'm just going to make some numbers up here. Let's say that machine cost me $15,000. $15,000 is a lot of money. So my first and primary interest is, if I'm going to shell out $15,000, how quickly can I get $15,000 back? Because I don't just have $15,000 laying around. I mean, and if I'm going to go to a bank and borrow $15,000 to buy that, I got to pay that money back to the bank. And I don't want it to be a 30-year mortgage to pay back a screw machine. Am I going to be able to pay that make all that money back in profit to pay that back in a year's time? And so that's what a lot of people don't understand. When we look at something, say the Black Hornet project, so that was a fun project. Mike and I had been talking about what are we going to do next, and we were kicking around different ideas, and he was actually kicking some ideas with his in-house machinist. And he called me up one day. He said, "Hey, I think I got this idea." He's like, we've been talking about some new broadhead. It's got to be cut on contact. I was actually running down a rabbit trail of a replaceable 3-blade head at the time. And he's like, these short and squatty heads that some of these companies are making, got this idea for this product. And so we kick it around. And so that product actually took nearly a year to develop. It took, I think it was somewhere around $20,000 of investment money on his money, because there was machining setup time, there were samples that had to be run. There's just so much that goes into the whole thing. Not only that, but now you're also taking a machining time window out of your current production. Now, thankfully, where he was at, because he had changed up some production with some other stuff, he'd sold off the traditional lines ahead, so it freed up some equipment time. He was able to sneak that in, but he had also just bought a new screw machine shortly before that. So all of a sudden now he had all these capital costs that he had to attribute to that project and assign to it. So in reality, it was a very expensive project, to do. And it took a whole year, and there was constant shipping of product back and forth between us. And I was doing some modeling and CAD drawings and everything. We actually ended up doing some 3D printed models later on another product that was kind of loosely based on the Black Hornet. And so you just have all this that goes into it, and people just don't understand all that money and time and resource. And when you're a broadhead company, for example, like us, it does me no good as a company to move Nate Sellers from, say, a Magnus Stinger buzz cut over to a Magnus, you and I were joking, Murder Hornet. Because of Murder Hornets earlier in the year. You and I were joking the other day about that. Okay, we're going to come out with a new head, Murder Hornet. I'm going to start a rumor. How's that?
There you go.
Okay, so it takes me no good to take Nate Sellers and move him from a buzz cut to a Murder Hornet, because you, as the typical consumer, our heads are usually around $40 a pack. So I just took your $40 and took it from product A to product B. I did nothing internally for me as a business to grow. I need to bring your buddy in who doesn't shoot a Magnus product. He shoots a whatever product. Bring him in and get him to buy into one of the product lines. So if you can't, when you add a new product, if all you're going to do is shift your customer base, you've done nothing to financially gain yourself. And, there just isn't the marketing money out there like your big bow manufacturers have, your Matthews, your Hoyt, and them, that they have to dump into marketing campaigns and flooding hunting TV and magazines and all that stuff and online social media. We just don't have those kind of budgets. So people do get frustrated because they're like, you guys haven't released a new product. Or what if you made a 200 grain Black Hornet? And I'm like, you know what? We could make a 300 grain Black Hornet if you wanted. And I'm sure I could figure out a way to make it fly from an engineering perspective. But you've got to look at what that market segment is and to tool up to go to. And again, these are crazy numbers. Let's say somebody wanted a 300 grain Black Hornet. To tool up and do that would probably be, I would say that would probably be a $5,000 to $7,500 investment to tool up to do that. You got to show me where I can not only recoup all that money to tool up to do it, but then make it worthwhile in new customers to continue and make a profit. And it's just not doable. Look, on my computer upstairs, I got some awesome product ideas. I mean, Mike and I kick around stuff all the time. I got some awesome product ideas, but if you can't move them and you can't generate the profit, then that's all they're ever going to be is ideas. If somebody wants to offer me money to buy those ideas, I'll gladly sell them. But it's just, and there's actually been one here recently where I had an offer to sell it, and we may negotiate a deal on something. But another great example of that is the bow pod. Man, that was an awesome product. Gosh, was that a great product. He and I worked and developed that product. And it sold, but it was one of those products that just took a long time to sell. It's not a consumable product. So once you buy one, you're typically not going to buy another one. Bow shops weren't displaying it properly. And so the product just dies, unfortunately. In that product there, we probably had close to $5,000 in developing that product. And people are like, oh man, I want those, Rack Pack's another one. Oh man, the Rack Pack was a killer product. And people are like, yeah, I want one. You're like, I would love to give them to you, but I can't, we can't in the Rack Pack, for example, for us to put out to get like 1,000 units, I think it was. I mean, you're talking like a $20,000 investment. It's just insane amount of money. And we can't sit there and camp out on that money. You need to flip it. You got to flip it and get the cash flow going and move the product out. And people don't understand why new products don't get to market or old products die, or why you don't develop every idea. Again, I got tons of great ideas, but it all just comes into, it's just the well of money is not deep for the majority of these companies like us.
And this is something I tried to harp on in the very first episode of this podcast, is how much, I don't want to call it dead money, but that's essentially what it is. It's hopeful for a shop, they're buying X amount of, they can't just buy one pack of Broadheads and just see what happens. They have to be committed to X amount of money in a product line in order to sell that. And if it doesn't sell, or if you guys as a manufacturer, you make it, you're 10, 15, 20,000 in a hole, and what if it doesn't take off, right? What if it doesn't want to sell? It's a huge business risk and huge investment. I could make a YouTube video and it could just die. Doesn't matter. It was just some time, a little bit of camera equipment, some internet to upload it to YouTube. It doesn't matter, right? I have nothing really wholly invested in that. But if it does well, great. I just quadrupled my return on investment in terms of time and my camera equipment, that sort of stuff. When you're a business, these larger ones like Faradyne, I'll just pick on Faradyne because they're just so massive. They have Muzzy and Block Targets and Rage and all sort of stuff. They can put $30,000 into they can go from the Rage Tri-Pan to the No Collar to the Plus P. They can do that because $30,000 in something that conglomerate that large is, as sad as it is to say, it's pocket change in a lot of those things. Whereas these smaller hometown heroes, if you will, it's not the same, and the profit margin is not high, and so you're selling a lot of packs of Broadheads. And this is something that I've been kind of getting a lot of ruffled feathers about, because people keep asking about single bevel. Why don't these companies start making single bevel things? And I'm so tired of hearing about it, because I don't think you understand that a single bevel knife and a double bevel knife are two totally different machining processes. The amount of time that would go into investing in that, and then again, if Nate Sellers goes from shooting a double bevel stinger to a single bevel stinger, it does no good. You're not gaining any extra money than whatever. And so I got to bring a friend and his friend and a few more friends to try to help recoup that, and it just doesn't happen.
And they're
And
still going to ask, well, if it's good enough for your friends, then why aren't you shooting it, Nate?
right,
I mean,
exactly.
that's the we've gone down the single bevel route before, and we've kicked it around and thought about it, and it just, again, it doesn't fit what we do. I'm not going to argue the science one way or the other. I mean, you got diehards that believe one way and diehards that believe the other. And I sit there and go, okay, you know what? Either way, A or B, I have a dead deer, and for what I'm doing, it works for me. And so we look at it, Magnus, and go, where's the market? We've got to have a big market in the way this company is structured to make it worth our while to jump into the single bevel, and we don't see it. So why not let the other companies that do that well, let them do that well? We'll do what we do well. There's room for everybody, here, and let them do what they do well. We'll do what we do well. I mean, do you want a single bevel? Sure. Are you here's the best question for the consumer and we've had these conversations. Consumer says yes, but there will be a market there. It's a smaller market. It's market. Okay. I dump the money into this. We do this. Actually, Mike dumps the money in. We do this. We're going to do it. Guess what those packs of heads are going to cost you? Well, what? $150 a pack. Well, why so much? We got to recoup the money. Well, I'm not going to buy that. Well, then guess what? Now you understand why we're not going to do that. I'm not knocking the single bevel. I would love it. Man, I would love for you to be able to open up a Cabela's catalog and there be 15 different Magnus, completely different concepts of broadheads for you to choose from. But A, we can't justify it. And B, we'd also be shooting ourselves in the foot, I mean, and saying, well, wait a minute, thought the buzz cut stinger was, this most efficient type of cutting head. Well, I thought the Black Hornet opens these massive holes. And then why are you doing this head? And why are you doing that head? So again, you've got to look at every business is different. Every business is set up to work in a manner that that is efficient for them and hopefully allows them to excel in what they're good at. And we're at 30, we're finishing up 36 years. Next year will be year 37 with Magnus Broadheads. We are not perfect at all, but I think that we've proven we're pretty darn good at what we do. And so we focus on customer service, attention to detail, quality, keeping it simple, and communication is the big thing now, anymore, is just communicating with the customers, because now the customers have a direct line of access to Mike, to me, to pro staffers, to guys like you or Troy Fowler that mention the name quite a bit. The consumer, the average Joe consumer has direct line of contact, where that wasn't the case 15, 20 years ago. I mean, 15, 20 years ago, you weren't getting in touch with Michael Waddell because he was, promoting a broadhead. Right now, if I had an issue with something Michael Waddell was shooting, A, I have his phone number, but B, if I didn't, I could get his phone number or get in touch with him through social media, through some other channel or somebody else. So it's today is different. So communication is key, and that's where we think we excel at Mag. So.
Well, and it's one of the things that always blows my mind is, if you go onto Facebook forums and someone asks like, what, what do you think about this broadhead? Say it's a Magnus or whatever. Mike will make a YouTube comment. The guy's working like 40-hour days, yet he finds time to go onto Facebook and connect to customers in a literal one-on-one. I mean, that type of thing it's expected now to an extent, but it's still not from everybody. And so I think that speaks worlds to what these smaller companies are doing, and I think people appreciate that way more than they ever did than just walking into their local big box store, buying a brand of anything and not having that connection. Because, if I had a problem, even if I wasn't in my position, if I had a problem, I remember back well before I had any YouTube, I wrote an email or something, and the responses from my Sound Magnus CEO, and it's like, oh my gosh, the freaking CEO just sent me an email. Like, that is it's not some tech intern sitting in a cubicle somewhere. I mean, it's that type of stuff that is really important and really critical, and I think you guys do really, really well. So
Yeah, thanks. That's, I'm speaking for Mike because I know him so well, but that's Mike, what he strives to be. He all wants to be all customer service all the time. He cannot stand it when somebody is upset with him, um, whether it's justified or not with the product. With most of the time, it's not justified, and we find the solution. But he cannot stand it when somebody's upset, and he will do whatever, pretty much to resolve the situation.
right.
So
So let's step away from the industry and let's go closer to home here. I want to talk about raising kids in the outdoors. And anybody who follows Derek on YouTube, New Day Outdoors, and if you don't, you should, because he's pumping out content like crazy. His cinematography is phenomenal. We'll talk more about that filming aspect later down the road. But if you notice, in almost all of his videos, his daughters, who are now college age, are in his videos, and they're in their older videos. Your youngest was one of the promo videos for the Magnus Bullhead, the turkey chopper, turkey head flopper broadhead. It's been a big part of your life to bring your daughters into the outdoors. And I've got two kids, both girls, 3 and 4. And I know I look up to people like you and other people that are raising their kids through the outdoors. I just want to talk about what are some things that you did out there in Indiana to start your kids that made it easier, more fun, because you were doing it before there were iPads, right? You were taking kids out in the woods before there were
mhm.
iPads, technology to amuse themselves. What were you doing to make it, I don't want to say necessarily easier, but definitely more inviting to them when they were a much younger age?
Yeah, so my daughters are 19 and 21. Sydney is 19. Trevor, yes, I know that's an odd name for a girl, but yeah, Trevor, she is 21. They're both heading off to Purdue, so yeah,
Boiler
they're
up.
at that age. Yeah, boiler up. So yeah, they're college age, and for me, this goes back to when I grew up. My dad and I have a very complicated relationship. Unfortunately, we're not close. Love the guy to death, but we're not, and we didn't do much, together when I was growing up. And I'm not blaming him. I'm just saying that's what happened. And so when I had kids, I wanted to do whatever with my kids. And so, I was hunting, and Trevor was just a little tiny thing, and she, being a kid, you know, wanted to be with dad all the time. And so I welcomed that, whether it was tinkering out on the garage and stuff or whatever. And she was drawn to going hunting. And so I'm like, well, we got to figure this out. I don't know. I didn't grow up in a hunting family. So for me, I didn't have a parent as a mentor, or an uncle or anything like that. So, well, I guess we're going to figure this out. And there was no rule book. There was nothing to teach me how to do it. And it was just all about making them fun. And so really I started them out, both of them. I'm also loved to waterfowl hunt. And at the time I used to do a lot of goose hunting in the September seasons. And this was all about the time when like layout blinds were starting to get popular, where you lay them in a field. And, I was just like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to make it fun for them. And so I'd put them in layout blinds, and the temperatures were warm. And when geese are flying in, it's a lot different than deer hunting. There's you see them, they're in big groups, you hear them, you're calling to them. There's just a lot of input. It's just things are going from a lot of stimulation going from all different directions, and they fed on it. They thought it was neat, and it just kept going from there. And it was like, hey, Dad, how soon till I can hunt? You know, I'm like, well, you got past this hunter safety and blah blah blah, and it's just I remember Trevor. I think I told her, I'm like, yeah, when you're 7, I'll take you for hunter safety. And I remember on her 7th birthday, I remember it as clear as it was yesterday. Dad, I'm 7. When do I get to take hunter safety exam? I'm like, oh crap, what did I do here? I created a monster. And so I always tried to get them in situations, whether definitely before they were hunting and when they were just coming along with Dad, but also when they started actually hunting, I tried to put them in situations where I knew that we would see something. Um, and I would put them in situations where it was comfortable too. So many dads I used to hear about it like, oh, my dad made me go out when I was 7 years old and it was 0 degrees and sitting in a tree stand quiet. And I'm like, you know what? That'd be the first way to steer me away from wanting to go deer hunting. Hell, I don't like doing that now. So I would take them out in the warmer seasons. I would find, I would find a spot where I had some beans that were still green in a field, and I'd had trail cameras up and like, okay, I know there's does and fawns coming in here to feed. I didn't care about a big buck. It was just getting them to see stuff, taking them out turkey hunting over an open field in a ground blind where I knew we would at least see a bird and I knew we would hear birds. Just, stuff like that to keep them engaged. I felt that was really important. I introduced them to bows and firearms at a very young age. Some I got ridiculed back in the day for it, back on forums before social media, but on forums about, introducing my kids to firearms too young and bows too young. And I mean, both of my kids, they had BB guns and were shooting them when they were 4 years old. And, of course, all this stuff is very supervised and safe and everything, I mean, safety was always the most important thing. And, teaching them teaching them to handle a BB gun as if it was a 12 gauge shotgun, I mean, the muzzle direction, the safety, I mean, just everything you would do and just drilling it into them, but keeping it fun and letting them shoot rather than shooting paper, shooting balloons because a balloon pops and they actually see that, and, or taking water bottles and filling them up with water with red food coloring so they could actually see water spray out, and everything we did was with the intention of having fun and learning, and it just grew. And for some reason, neither one of them lost the passion. I was very blessed in that both of them still are ate up with it. Now, arguably at 19 and 21, Sydney's my hardcore hunter. That girl will hunt. Trevor loves to hunt, but for her, it's more about spending time with Dad, which is equally just as cool in my opinion. But Sydney's the one that will be like, let's go turkey hunt, Dad. Let's go deer hunt, Dad. And she's funny because we don't talk much when we're out hunting. We hunt together. That is a cool thing. My girls don't like to hunt away from me. They can and they have, but they don't like to. They want to be in the stand with me, and they don't need me to coach. I'm the cameraman. But they like that. And Sydney she and I won't ever say a word. And she knows she she does all the work. She set decoys or say, no, Dad, I think we ought to do this with the decoys or that. Trevor's the opposite. She gets in the deer stand with me and we never stop talking. We laugh. We're taking selfies. I can't even believe that we see a deer half the time that we do. But for her, hunting is more of a dad and me thing. I hope that as she becomes an adult and has her own family, I hope that somehow we figure out a way to keep that whole thing going where she keeps hunting and still keeps it a family thing for her. But again, Sydney, that kid is locked on when she goes turkey hunting or deer hunting or, whatever. That kid just hunts. And so I think, again, it was all back to just keeping it all fun. And, as technology progressed and stuff, iPads did creep into the hunting blind with us and all that, but it was always about taking snacks, taking books, taking whatever, just to be out there together, and always keeping it fun. I see too many dads. I've seen it in friends of mine here. I've seen it with comments online about the most important thing of that hunt is that big buck or that turkey or whatever. And my mindset was always about the most important about this thing about this hunt is time in the field with my kids. If we get a big buck, if we kill a big turkey, if we kill a doe, I mean, whatever it is, that's the icing on the cake. I always wanted to put them in a situation where we'd see it because that makes it fun. Honestly, I hate sitting in a deer stand all day and not seeing anything too. So I wanted that for them. I wanted them to hear turkeys gobble. But if we got something awesome, if we didn't, so be it. And actually, if you really want to be technical about it, I think this spring, Trevor and I doubled turkeys. We shot turkeys with shotguns at the same time. It was an awesome opportunity. She killed one, I killed the other one, all on film. Besides that, I can't remember a time, besides goose hunting, waterfowl hunting, I can't remember a time that one of my kids was with me when I killed an animal. Goose hunting and duck hunting was different, but deer hunting, I know that neither one of them's ever been with me when I killed an animal. And I'm 99% sure that's the first time one of them's ever been with me when I killed a turkey. So that tells you what I believe in my heart that says is where I put the value of those hunts. The value is with them. Um, we saw a lot of cool stuff together. We experienced a lot of cool stuff together. I've been right there next to every one of them when they've killed every single animal that they've killed. But again, it was always about. Now I take that back. I did kill one big buck. I killed a big buck when Trevor was with me one time. Yes, I do remember that as well. Big 11 pointer actually. But outside that, I mean, it's always has been about time with them and just keeping it fun. And that's what I would encourage. I mean, this is a long-winded answer, but I would just encourage parents and if your kids, take interest, do whatever makes it fun and focus on that, and then let the chips fall where they may, at that point. So,
Well, and
anyways,
I will say that speaks volumes in the sense that, when I started hunting in PA, you couldn't hunt till you were 12. So I did my own thing in the woods, this, that, and the other thing. And turkey hunting, obviously, I started. My parents didn't hunt, so it was my mom's dad, and I had missed because of the timing of the hunter safety system course and everything. I missed my first deer season at the age of 12. I didn't get it till turkey season the following spring, and so my granddad had to go with me, obviously, and sit. I had no idea what I was doing. But then as soon as I started hunting deer at 13, 14, right after that first kind of one or two sits there at the age of 13, I didn't kill anything, but my granddad was like, all right, you can climb a tree stand and keep yourself safe. You hunt this ridge, and if you need me, I'll be over there on that ridge. Right. And that's the way he was raised. And
yeah,
it was very looking back, it's very understandable. At the time I was like, this doesn't make any sense. But I did not kill a deer in anybody else's presence until 3 years ago, right?
yeah,
And I had killed one turkey with my granddad a couple years. I think I was 14 or 15. But outside of that, I had never hunted next to somebody and they were present when I shot something. And so I was out a couple years ago with a buddy and I shot a doe, and I remember it being like the coolest experience because someone was there to experience it with me. Last year, my good buddy Nate from the Budget Sportsman, we went out hunting together, and it was the first time I'd ever killed a buck with somebody next to me. And we got the
mm-hmm,
whole thing on film. And it was such a special moment to me because I'd never had it growing up as a
mm-hmm,
kid. And
yeah,
thankfully, I've kept the hunting passion and the archery passion my entire life, even though I've always been kind of a lone wolf in that regard. But knowing that like I can give that opportunity of always being there for my kids, I think that's super important because being a school teacher, I teach 10, 11, 12-year-olds, they're always talking about, I'm out with pap, I'm out with dad, I'm out with uncle or mom or grandma even. and we killed a turkey together. I'm like, that is cool, because that is something that you'll remember as a special. It happens. It's really cool. I watch it on your channel all the time. It's cool. You get the experience. You're hugging each other. You're laughing. You're crying together. It's so exhilarating, no matter the size or what the animal is. And I think those are bonds and moments that you don't ever lose between family members, and particularly a father and son or father and daughter in our cases. So I'm excited for it. I think it'll be a lot of fun. It's cool to watch. And
Dude, it's been this amazing ride that I would never trade for anything, and I'm sure, I mean, my kids played sports and everything, but that's been fun to watch them, in their tennis careers in particular, or 4-H. They're both of my girls are big in 4-H, and watching them over that 10-year progression. But nothing has been as satisfying as watching them go from little kids to now young women, and being there with them and all those kills. I mean, Sydney killed her first turkey when she was 7 years old, and to me, granted, I've watched it on video now probably 1,000 times. I mean, it's still on my YouTube channel, but I remember it like it was yesterday in my mind. If there was never even a video of that, I would remember it just clear as day. She killed a little button buck when she was 8 years old with her muzzleloader on my property, which we did not own then, but we now own, and is literally in the exact same spot about 20 yards from where Sydney killed her first turkey. But we didn't own the property then, and that one too. That one was not filmed because that was before I was filming, and that one too. I can remember every detail of that hunt in my mind. I mean, seriously, to the point where I'm like, I really didn't video that, because I would swear I watched that thing a million times on video.
right.
But those memories, I mean, every single one of them, I've got them, and some have been preserved on film. There have been others that we've just left the cameras at home and just gone and hunted just to hunt. Which
Yeah.
is fun every once in a while, because everything I do typically is with a camera, and some of those are fun to just even leave the camera behind.
Right.
But I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Well,
So.
let's actually unpack that a little bit, because you have done so much filming. Let's kind of transition to this, as this is new to me, filming hunts. I've been in front of a camera now for multiple years, but last year was my first, like, honest to goodness, in front of a camera for hunting. You've been doing it for a very long time. And
Mhm.
I don't think I've actually ever asked you, so this would be kind of new to me. Maybe I just forget, but why cinematography and filmography and photography? Like, where did that blossom start? Like, has that been with you forever, or was that because?
No,
Okay.
no, not at all, not at all. It all goes back to my kids, really. As I never owned a camera, anything. Didn't even, if you had handed me a 35 millimeter film camera back in the day, I'd have been like, I don't even know what to do with something like that. But it started out, it was the girls. I think Trevor she had killed the button buck, and I was like, man, I gotta figure out a way to preserve this. And of course, I mean, this was in 90, I don't know, 90, 96, 97. It's been a long time now. And she, we had a little handy cam that my wife had, that we would video the kids like most parents did. It was on tape base back when they were little, and it's just you set it on a tripod on Christmas morning and let it run for 3 hours or whatever, and then nobody ever watches the stuff again. So I decided, another good friend of mine here at home, he was all big into what's the group? Slunger Hollow. They're Ohio boys. They had a TV show. They did some DVDs. He was big into them. He was gonna film hunt, and he just wanted to do everything that they were doing. And I was like, oh, whatever, dude. Like, okay. Like, I have zero interest in this. And so then, my daughter, and my kids are older than his. And so my daughter kills that button buck, and we worked together at the time, and we are talking, and he's like, man, he's like, too bad you don't have that on video. I'm like, whatever. So the next year it got to be deer season, and I had a ground blind set up, and I was like, I'm gonna grab that handy cam. And I think we had this rickety tripod and all that, and I took Trevor out, and it was in the youth season, and sure enough, like an hour into the hunt, this big old doe and a couple fawns roll out, and I'm filming it, um, and boom, she rolls this big doe, drops her right in her tracks at like 25 yards, and I filmed the whole thing. And we were just it, dude, it's like the worst edit. It's actually on a different YouTube channel of mine that I lost the password 4 years ago, and I can't get into it. So anyways, and I just stumbled on that video actually the other day, and I just laugh at it because it's such a terrible video, but it just lit a fire, and I was like, man, I'm just going to keep doing this. And I had I had no intentions of cinematography, of artsy, shooting photos, getting in there. It was just filming your kids. So then I'm like, okay, I'm sure I can film myself. I remember I shot the dinkiest doe one time, self-filming. It was the first thing I'd filmed of me shooting something. And I just I look, I'm an engineer. I have OCD. I'm obsessive compulsive as it gets. And when I jump into something, I typically jump in both feet, and like it's a good thing I'm not like a car junkie or something, because I'd be like, yeah, I gotta have this, and I gotta, that's what I did. I just started buying camera gear, and I dove into this world of trying to learn as much as I could. And I mean, the rabbit hole just went so deep, and so it just became studying and reading and researching. And back then, even when I did all this, YouTube was just starting back then, and so you didn't have, like, now, if you want to know how to shoot some kind of epic b-roll with a drone, dude, all you gotta do is go on YouTube and be like, epic b-roll with a drone, and here come 50 videos, uh from drone nerds to, I mean, it's just all the different channels, and there's great stuff. And you can become an expert within 2 hours of watching videos, and then you got to go out and apply it. It wasn't that way then, and I didn't know how to shoot photos, and I had some guys that I kind of loosely knew, and they kind of ran some basics with me, and I bought a couple used cameras, and again, I spiraled down this rabbit hole, and for me, it's actually an addiction. It's pretty it's pretty bad, because I can watch videos on, what's one, I was watching a video on lighting here the other day, um on different lighting techniques, and I'm just like, have I really gone down the rabbit hole this far? And I'm like, okay, I got to have that light, I got to have that diffuser, I got to get this, I got to do that, and it just spiraled out of control, and here I am. And I'm one who's never been happy with what I just did. Like, there's got to be a way to do it better there, and that's the way I run my life with everything. There's got to be a way to do what I just did better. And I don't want to make a hunting video anymore that is what every Tom, Dick, and Harry on YouTube, or the cookie cutter stamped project that we've seen on TV a zillion times for the last 20 years. I don't want that. I don't want to make that. And so, again, I find myself going down this rabbit hole of, how do I become creative in a different way and make something that stands out, hopefully a little different than everybody else, and isn't focused necessarily on the one kill shot of that giant deer. Is, okay, how could you take shooting a doe and turn it into this really kick butt 10-minute video that tells a story, that's got multiple camera angles, and has got this cinematic effect that feels like I didn't just watch the same cookie cutter production that, has been out there for 20 years now. So that's just kind of where the whole thing ended up taking me. So
Yeah, and this is something with this telling a story thing I think is so important. Like, of course, having the multiple camera angles is really cool. That really helps bring an extra, I don't want to say three-dimensional element, but it really does. Particularly like your turkey hunts, you'll have a GoPro out of the decoy. You'll have a GoPro facing you in the blind. You got the main camera doing a lot of the heavy lifting, and it just tells a much better story than what we're used to. But also, one thing that I vividly remember as a kid watching TV shows, the hunting shows, I loved watching it where it was like a 5 minute long. Well, here was sit one, nothing happened. Here was sit two, nothing happened. Here was sit three. We saw the deer that we were chasing, but he was 50 yards away. Then sit four, and the seasons are changing. We go from the early season to the rut to the late season, and then it's late season over a cut bean field. He comes out and they whack him with a muzzle loader, and it's like, oh, that is awesome. How much time and energy and devotion was put into that hunt. Granted, maybe it was at an outfitter, maybe it was on a real manicured farm, if you will, for these deer out in the Midwest. But for somebody like me who, I'm hunting the hardwoods of PA and that sort of stuff, it was like, okay, they also have sits where they don't see anything. Or okay, they have a sit where they saw a whole bunch of does, and they didn't get a shot. Or, they had a sit where they saw a couple of raccoons come out of a tree den or something. That's cool. And this is something that the YouTube creation scene has taken on. I think it's really important because I think people connect to that more and they appreciate that more. And we were talking earlier off air about your turkey hunt down in Texas. And we see the 8-10 minute long clip, but it was like 4 days and multiple trips and all that sort of stuff. And we get to see all of that in just a short amount of time, but it builds the story so much better.
yeah, well, something that was forgotten in the hunting industry and in all those years of hunting TV. And it started, like you said, but it was forgotten along the way. And then it got forgotten and it still is forgotten some today by a lot of people. Everybody wants to see the kill. That's all they care about. They just want to see the animal die. But what has been forgotten is the basic principle. I don't care what you're shooting. It can be a turkey hunt, a deer hunt. It could be a documentary about an athlete. It could be whatever. Story is king every time. And I'm not talking tech review videos. I'm not talking like videos on how to, properly, anchor and release a bow. What I'm talking about is when you're trying to produce something, let's say about a hunt, story trumps everything, period. There's got to be a story. There's got to be a setup. It's basically the three-part narrative. There's got to be a setup, there's got to be a conflict, and there's got to be a resolution. Its story trumps it all. If you don't have that, then all you got is somebody with a camera that happens to film an arrow going through a deer. Hey, here we are, holding my deer up, blah, blah, blah. Boom. That has been done 8 million times on YouTube. And it's the most boring thing to watch. And, if that stings, if somebody hears that and that stings, then so be it, because I can say that because I did it. I did it for many years. I was regurgitating the same crap. And it was boring, and you've got to tell a story. I went down to Texas twice this past spring, and both times it was a grind, it was grueling. And I produced, a couple of videos on those. And I actually really liked the second one I did. And the second one was just me shooting a Jake at the end of the trip. But what I tried to do was, I did not want this just like, why'd you go to Texas just to shoot a Jake? I wanted to tell a story of how we got to shooting that Jake. So in 8 minutes, I don't remember the length of the video, what it is, I tried to hopefully take the viewer on a journey and told the journey primarily through images, with as little narrative as possible. In fact, I go back and look at the edit now in my continually obsession I want to do it better. I go back and I go, man, you could have whacked that. You could have whacked that out of there. You could have cut that out of there. You're talking too long. Shut up. Just like I am right now. And, here, tell the story. And I want to tell the story through the video aspect of it. It's one of the things I've been kind of striving to do is less narrative when it comes to hunting stuff. Again, I'm not talking product reviews. I mean, how you and I were talking, I was shooting video last night on a video I'm working on, and I got back and was looking stuff on the computer. I'm like, dude, gosh, you talk too much. But I think it's needed in certain situations. I'm talking about, again, shooting a hunt video, and how do you come up with different ways to tell that story and tell it different than somebody else. And quite frankly, I look outside the industry to try and find something to inspire me on how I'm going to tell a hunting story. I'll look at something, um, for example, the series on Netflix, The Ranch. It's kind of slapsticky comedy, but their intro to that show, if you've ever watched it, the intro to the show is really well done, and it is video images overlaid on top of each other that just, it's like 4 layers deep, and they fade and they continue rotating. And if you watch those 2 trips to Texas that I did, I took that principle and put it in there. And I'd been wanting to do that for so long, because I think what you can do is you can tell in 30 seconds or 60-second time block, you can tell a long story in a short time block by doing that. And it was something I did. And the first one I did, I kind of liked it. The second one I liked better. If I was going to do that edit again today, I would tweak it even further. But it's looking outside of the industry to come up with inspiration. I have a ton of YouTube creators that I watch. Most of the stuff I watch on YouTube is not hunting related. I mean, 90% of it's not. But there are creators out there that I watch religiously, because I want to see how they tell their stories, and how can I take some of their principles and pull them into the hunting genre. Not copy them, but just pick ideas and go, man, I remember seeing somebody do something, this move with this camera and transition into this. How can I do something similar in what I'm doing and create something different than XYG Turkey Thug channel or whatever, on YouTube. So yes, that's kind of where I try and go with it.
Well, and I think it's funny, because we don't just buy a movie ticket and walk into the theater during the climax of the film and
Yeah,
and then just leave. We
yeah,
just don't do that. We watch it from beginning to end. And of course, I'm an English teacher. So, exposition, incident, rising action, climax, falling action. There's so many parts to a story. And it's so cool because, and I always remember years ago, I want to say it was close to 8, 9 years ago, somebody interviewed Ted Nugent. Of course, the Nuge is a crazy man, but he was talking about Fred Bear, and he was talking about how Fred Bear said that the kill is anticlimactic. It's all the buildup, right? You're talking to your buddies. Who's coming to camp? Who's bringing the water? Who's bringing the beer? Who's going to sit here, hang in the trail camera? All this sort of stuff. You get pictures. You plant the food plot. You do all this. It builds and builds and builds and builds and builds. And that climactic moment of you actually standing over the animal that you work so hard for is just moments. It's seconds of the whole thing. It really is just moments of months of preparation. And I think that's where channels like yours, and of course everybody knows the hunting public, they just do from the moment where they're in the car talking about this, they're looking at the map, they're back at the hotel or the Airbnb, they're scouting this, we're going to try this out, we don't know, sometimes it pans out, sometimes it's trash, but we all are doing that at home in our own hunting experience. And I think we love seeing that story from beginning to end. We talked a little bit off air. If I'm scrolling through my YouTube feed and I see a video that's like 10 minutes long, I'm like, do I really have 10 minutes? Hunting public video comes on, it's 42 minutes long. I watch that sucker beginning to end because it tells that story and it captivates that part of my hobby, that archery and the hunting, that just tells that story. And we all live for that story, and we want that story to be told in a fluid way. I ramble as much as the next guy, if not way more. And we want that story to be told in a clean, concise way that we follow along, we understand, we resonate with. And I think that's important. You'll have to send me some of the other channels that you're following, because I could use some good content now here. Been quarantined since February. I could really use
Yeah,
some fresh YouTube content.
man, I'll tell you what, he does a lot of reviews of it. Man, anything that Peter McKinnon touches,
Okay.
dude, like anything that Peter McKinnon touches. Guy by the name of Josh Yo. He's got a YouTube channel called Make Art Now. Just, oh my goodness. Like, I mean, if you watch their films that they do, and just even some of the goofy stuff they do, I watch it. Jesse Driftwood is another guy. Like, I'm just like, what, how in the world did you just pull that off with a camera? How in the world did you take me somewhere trying to, they sometimes they take you down a path telling a story and you're like, I see where this is going, and then you get blindsided with something else. You're like, holy crap, I never saw this turn this way. And so, those are just, some of them that I gravitate to, and they also do a lot of breaking down and how that they do things. And there's just a lot to be learned. And when you should really go outside the industry, even go into, to movies. I mean, pick your favorite movies and watch how in your favorite movies or TV shows that they do something, whether it's a look, whether it's a color grade, if you like a color grade or a style, stylization. I color grade all of my footage because I don't want my footage to look like somebody who doesn't do color grading. I want the teals, I want the oranges, I want some of the contrast and the texture. I want to take advantage of the dynamic range in the cameras. One of the huge appeals for the hunting public guys and their channel is the story they tell. They tell it in a raw way. They tell it in a very unpolished way. Their footage looks like what you can produce with any camera that you go and buy. And that's awesome. It works for them. I know those guys are wonderful guys and they do a great job. And I don't want mine to look like that. I want mine to have a more polished look. I want mine to have a more cinematic, artsy look to it. I color grade everything. I work in different color palettes depending on the mood of the product or the project. I may change the mood of the project from a very warm mood to a cold mood throughout the video just because where the story takes it. So that's just the way I like to do it. And it's one of the ways that I found that I can hopefully differentiate myself from others. Now, some people don't like it. I got a really good friend of mine here at home, hates everything I do, absolutely hates it, hates everything I do. He wants to see the kill. That's all he cares about. That's it. And that's cool. I get it. And then there's other people that love it. And, at the end of the day, you just make, what makes you happy. But if you really want to produce something good, no matter how you shoot it, what equipment you shoot it with, what audio you record with, if you have one camera or 10 cameras, story is king every time. Every time, story's king.
Hashtag create more.
Create more, man. Hashtag create more. Somebody told me to do that, and I was like, by God, I'm going to do it. So,
Well, buddy, I can't thank you enough for being on the podcast today. Plug yourself again. Where can folks find the Derek Craig on the social media?
So obviously I have my own Facebook page, but really, I mean, my content is really geared towards video, and YouTube is king for me, and it's New Day Outdoors. It's my YouTube channel. You can find my Instagram, New Day Outdoors. I have a New Day Outdoors Facebook page. It just ends up getting links from my YouTube because YouTube is really kind of everything. I don't Twitter. I do have a Twitter account, but I've pretty much deleted it off my phone. Actually, I've deleted all social media from my phones in the last few weeks, and it's the best feeling.
Really?
Oh, dude, yeah. I only get on. I've got a tablet that I'll get on like in the evening and just check, some updates. But yeah, my phones don't have. I have 3 phones, and none of them have social media on them anymore.
That's awesome.
None. So. Yeah, but really go to my YouTube channel and please, hit subscribe. follow along. I do a lot of videos that aren't hunting related as well. But I decided, a year or more ago, I'm just going to create stuff that makes me happy. So I've got, subcategories. If you just want to see turkey hunting stuff, there's, I think last count, there's like 80 some turkey related videos in there, and there's a deer section and there's a gear section and all that, and all my every weekend, my Saturday, Sunday videos are in there, which are seldom hunting related, but when they are, it's just kind of light and all that. But yeah, please, New Day Outdoors, go to that YouTube channel. If you go to the Magnus Broadheads channel, you'll see content that I've created there. That's obviously Magnus branded stuff. So yeah, that's the best way to find me. Reach out, send me a private message if you got questions about Magnus gear. I'm always there for a tech support standpoint. If you got questions about filming, if you got questions about getting your kids involved in hunting, bow hunting, whatever, hit me up. So for sure.
Well, thanks, bud. Well, folks, thanks for sticking with me and Derek today on today's episode of the Average Jack Archery podcast. Again, if you would like to be a part, send me an email, averagejackarchery@gmail.com. Find me on Instagram, find me on Facebook, and of course, you can always leave a comment on YouTube. Hope you're able to get outside, enjoy the sport of archery hunting if you so choose. Definitely enjoy God's beautiful creation, and we'll get to see you next time.